Alien abduction in East Lothian, Scotland. Coming up, Gary and Colin are allegedly abducted by extraterrestrials whilst driving on a quiet Scottish road. Even the Ministry of Defence investigate the case, and it remains one of Scotland's most convincing UFO encounters. Gary Wood and Colin Wright were driving towards a friend's house in Tarbrax near Edinburgh. The purpose of their visit was to deliver a satellite television system to a friend. It was about 8 p.m. on the 17th of August 1992, and they had just passed Harperwig Reservoir when they noticed a strange black object moving overhead. They said it did not look like any conventional aircraft, and it had no visible lights. They estimated the craft to be about 30 feet wide and just 20 feet above the car. This was certainly very much out of the ordinary. Next, and this is according to UK government files, the object dropped a curtain of light directly in front of their car. This curtain of light stretched across the entire width of the road, leaving Gary and Colin with little choice but to drive directly through this strange light. Gary was concerned about driving through this light, and he decided to hit the gas hard so he could pass through it as quickly as possible. However, once they entered this light, they both blacked out. The next thing that Gary could recall, according to media reports, is Gary found himself in total darkness outside the car. He could not understand what happened. How can a bright light do this? Gary was unable to see anything whatsoever, not even the night sky or the hand in front of his face. He was unable to find his friend Colin. Gary was so confused at this point. He thought to himself, perhaps I never made it through the lights. Perhaps I am dead. Very shortly after this, he blacked out again. After coming to, he found himself back in his vehicle with Colin, driving at a fast speed and the car partly out of control.
Look out!
Colin was shouting at Gary to control the car and look at what he's doing. Despite everything that Gary had been through, he managed to stop his vehicle after a few moments. Gary and Colin exited the vehicle and took a few deep breaths. They needed a moment or two to process the events of that evening. There was no sign of the craft or the strange light. After a short time, they both got back in the car and they continued their journey to their friend's house with the TV satellite system. Once they arrived at their friend's house in a small Scottish village by the name of Tarbrax, they took the satellite system out of the car and they knocked on their friend's house. They got no reply. They knocked again, a little louder. Eventually, a window on the second floor of the house opened and their friend poked his head out of the window, looking tired and confused. Gary and Colin estimated the time to be around 10:30 or so, but his friend informed them that it was almost 1 a.m. This shocked the pair. Somehow they had lost at least 2 hours of time. Over the coming days, Gary said he felt incredibly tired all the time, suffered from headaches and could not sleep well at night. He visited his doctor, but he was given a clean bill of health. Both Gary and Colin did not report their experience to the police or media due to their concern of being ridiculed, but they did report their sighting to the British UFO Research Association. In order to understand what happened, they looked deeper into the subject of ufology and discovered a Scottish organisation called Strange Phenomena Investigations, and through this, a man by the name of Malcolm Robinson. Malcolm suggested hypnotic regression, and whilst the pair were a little sceptical of this idea at first, they later agreed to it. After several sessions, a clearer picture of what may have happened came to light. According to this account, the car became stationary once it entered the light, and they were both in the presence of 6 small humanoids, 3 on each side of the car. Colin's account. The doors opened, and according to Colin, Gary was placed onto something similar to a stretcher, which floated through the air. Colin says he entered the craft via a ramp, which led to a strange room, and it was lit by dazzling light. Colin believes he went in and out of useful consciousness whilst on board the craft, so his memory jumps in some places. Next, Colin recalls being in a circular-shaped corridor and being led somewhere by an entity. The next thing he knew, he was in a round room that Colin describes as having strange curved walls. A chair was in the centre of the room and it had an organic feel to it. Colin's mind jumps again and he says he was now sitting in the chair, naked, and some form of examination of his body was in progress. Colin remembers looking towards the ceiling whilst this was taking place and describes the ceiling as corrugated, translucent, with diffuse lighting. The very next thing Colin recalls is alarmingly being inside a transparent container with his ankles strapped at the base. As he looked through the container, he could see many other containers with people inside them. He noticed 3 entities, much taller than the ones he previously saw, heading towards his container. Colin believes these taller entities scanned him using a device with 2 glowing red lights which moved up and down. Gary's account. Gary recalls being in a circular room as well, but with an examination table in the centre rather than a chair. Gary said he found himself laying on the table and was not able to sit up. He describes a lens-like device above him, which was twisting and turning as it moved around the room. It stopped directly above him, and he noticed a long, thin, translucent arm had stretched outwards, directly over his upper body. Next, this extended arm moved downwards towards his shoulder, which caused Gary a lot of pain. Similar to Colin, Gary's memory jumps in some places, but he describes later he saw a hole opening up in the floor and what he describes as a vicious, gel-like liquid inside. A type of column raised out of the liquid, which sent out electrical noise. Then, an extension moved out of this device and stretched in the direction of Gary. It then levelled with Gary's eyes, where he could see 2 glowing red lights. Gary noticed that the liquid in the floor was beginning to move or vibrate somehow. Next, bizarrely, Gary claims an incredibly thin, frail creature emerged from the gel-like liquid. This creature looked like a very weak and thin version of a grey, and its skeletal system could be made out through the entity's bruised skin. Gary also notes seeing another creature with a heart-shaped head and markings on its face similar to a Native American tribe. Gary did not know how, but he says he communicated telepathically with this creature. "Why are you doing this?" The creature responded, "Sanctuary, we are here already, and we are coming here." This telepathic conversation continues. The entity informed Gary that in many ways their existence was similar to human beings, and that they also have concerns and needs. The entity also said, "It is alleged, in many ways you are more advanced, but your species has been capped." Gary also recalls a young human woman sitting near the wall of the room. He said that she was naked and very distressed at the situation she was unfortunate enough to find herself in. He said she had a loose shaggy perm and had obviously been crying. Also, a human man was present, but this was quite different. He was not being examined in any way, but instead looked as if he was there by his own choice. Perhaps he was from the military. He was smartly dressed in a collar and tie, and was simply observing, as if making sure that extraterrestrials stay within an agreed set of rules. It's alleged that President Eisenhower had a meeting with extraterrestrials during the 1950s, and Eisenhower agreed to the Greys testing on human beings in exchange for extraterrestrial technologies. Was the suited man there to make sure that extraterrestrials honour the agreement? Another video I have done titled "Did President Eisenhower Have a Meeting with Extraterrestrials?" goes into more detail about this alleged event and is available to view on this channel. We make content on all aspects of the paranormal and unexplained, so please like, subscribe, and take a look at my other content. Thanks for tuning in.